Screams of a winter night. Hey, why is it gotta be a winter night? Why not a spring night or scream of a Memorial Day night? Well, I do have to admit, Screams of a Winter Night does have a good ring to it. Instantly, I envision a cold, dark, moonless night in the woods with something watching deep in the trees. Nothing but a thick wool blanket to keep me warm, which isn't working because my toes are going numb. There, did I set the mood for you? Good. Now let's dive into this horror anthology film set in the winter months. The mood is set right away with the opening credits. I kinda like this. Sure, there's no video, but you can hear everything that's going on. Something's howling outside, and this family's had enough. The father and son head out to fight the creature, and from the sounds of it, they lose. Now we meet a group of friends heading out for a weekend getaway. I say friends because they don't really seem to like each other very much. Even so, John here knows of an old cabin they can spend the night at. But first, they have to stop at an old creepy gas station to satisfy that trope. It really does happen in every horror movie ever. Honestly, there's nothing that really happens here. Sure, they get gas, there's some creeps wandering around, but this didn't have to be in the movie. While they drive, we learn that this place used to be called Coyote Lake because of all the weird screams and howls that can be heard at night. However, it's now called Lake Duran, named after the Duran family we heard in the opening credits. They make it to the cabin, and besides being a little run down with cobwebs, it'll do for a couple nights. But first, they need to get some wood for a fire and water from the lake. So they all split up. We do get to see the original Duran house and their tombstones, so that's pretty cool. But other than that, all of this is pretty boring. Some people sitting here talking, these guys wandering through the woods, and this loser forcing himself on a girl.
Why are you doing this?
It all goes on for a little too long. Just get to the stories already. Well, finally, after a really long time, John tells us about the Moss Point Man. One thing you'll notice is that all the actors in the stories are the same as in the cabin, which actually doesn't bother me that much. They were keeping the budget tight, but also you can kind of see it through their eyes, like as they're acting it out in their head. Anyway, this guy and girl decide to ditch an old high school dance and go for a drive. But like a dummy, he runs out of gas. Left with no other option but to hoof it.
What do you want, miracles?
He goes down the road for a bit, but something's watching him. Now, I got super excited thinking that this was a Yeti or Bigfoot or something, but in the end, I don't think it is. More like a gremlin. Anyway, it takes this guy out. And we see what his date's doing. Hiding in the car, freaking out over hearing something on the roof. After a few minutes, she grows a pair and heads out, only to see that the scratching sound she was hearing was her boyfriend hung with a noose. In the morning, they find her down the road, tied up to a tree, with little bite marks on her legs and small footprints on the roof of the car. The woman swears the creature that killed her boyfriend was small, like a child. Okay, not a bad way to start things off. The familiar urban legend story of a boyfriend hanging above the car. It's creepy and effective. Next is the story of the green light. As part of a fraternity, the new recruits have to spend the night in an old haunted hotel. Every once in a while, you'd see a light up on the top, but no one's ever made it past the first floor. All these guys have to do is spend the night in there, and in the morning they'll be picked up, safe and sound. But of course, that's not what's gonna happen. In the middle of the night, they hear something up there, and thinking it's the other guys messing with them, and not wanting to be the butt end of a joke, one of them heads up. But after an hour or so, he's still not back. Thinking their friend joined the others and is now laughing at them, they both head up to take a look. stepping past the first floor, but finding nothing of interest until seeing a green glow coming from one of the rooms at the end of a hallway. When he heads in, there's this crazy looking dude. I don't know, maybe he's an escaped inmate. He's just staring at a light bulb. I don't know what to think about all this. It's kind of funny, but also pretty creepy at the same time. In the morning, they comb the entire place, eventually finding all three boys scratched up, bleeding, and huddled around a light socket. Insane. Next up is Lori, who tells the story from her hometown about a witch. You see, there once was a woman who lived in the woods, a recluse, an outcast from the rest of the village. The Native Americans worshipped her, but the locals in town feared her, giving her the title of a witch. When she died, they refused to bury her in the town cemetery. Now, her spirit haunts the land she wasn't allowed to be buried in. Some kids are out doing a school project and they find an unmarked grave, empty. They run around the cemetery for a while, being chased by rags on a string, a witch. One guy falls into a freshly buried grave, and the other is just about to make his escape. But as he jumps, he falls onto the wrought iron fence, impaling himself, and the witch gets the last laugh. Interestingly, this story was originally cut from the film. They knew 2 hours was a bit long, so they decided to remove the witch story. But why not cut all the random walking around? If you would have done that, then the movie would have been like 20 minutes long. Even though it adds to the overall runtime, I'm glad they added this segment back for the director's cut. Anyway, back in the cabin, there's some more shenanigans. These girls are making sandwiches or something, and Bigfoot attacks the cabin. All right, this is what I was waiting for. Well, yeah, don't get your hopes up. It's just John playing a prank.
That's pretty good, huh, Hopper? Boy, you should have seen him.
Everyone gets mad at him, having enough of his jokes, and that's when Elaine chimes in, saying that the really creepy things aren't supernatural, but human. The person you would least expect. And that's what her story's about. A girl in her high school that didn't quite fit in. When a guy did finally ask her out, it was only so he could sleep with her. And when she refused, he didn't take no for an answer. So she stabbed him over and over again. She told the cops that a maniac was on the loose. He killed him, and she barely got away with her life. They bought her story, and she was able to graduate high school and move on to college. But she was changed by the experience, now hating men. One day, she noticed that her roommate took her shawl out of her closet, and she doesn't like that one bit. When she returns from her date, this chick goes crazy.
You're not even sorry, are you?
You are crazy, you know it?
She slowly walks down to the kitchen to get a knife. And I mean slowly. When she finally returns, her roommate tries to apologize, but it's too late for that. She's dead meat. After the story, they all start a little band.
Crazy Annie.
I gotta admit, it's a banger. Just then, the lanterns run out of fuel, and the wind's really picking up outside, to the point where it's like a tornado. But the group knows better. This isn't just ordinary wind, it's Wichitava, the wind spirit. They split up, some running outside toward the angry spirit,
You're crazy!
while the others hunker in for the night. But little do they know, it's not safe in here. The windows shatter, beams fall down, and then, once everyone's dead, the place blows up. The others run in the woods. There's a scream, and then that's that. I love anthology films. You get several stories for the price of one, and there isn't much time to waste on the main story. so usually there's no filler. Everyone knows about Creepshow and VHS, but not too many people talk about Screams of a Winter Night. And maybe that's for the best. Now, don't get me wrong at all, it's not a bad movie, but there is a lot of nothing going on. People walking down endless corridors or just sitting around talking about absolutely nothing important. It takes a half an hour just to get to the first story, but I wouldn't mind it, it's just there's nothing happening. They didn't have to stop at a gas station in the beginning. They didn't have to walk through the woods at all. Just go to the cabin, start a fire, and start telling some spooky stories. The highlights for me would be the opening credits with the story of the Durants, which kind of reminded me of listening to an old horror radio show. I also liked the second story, the one with the green room. It was kind of creepy and it wasn't that bad. And there is a lot of atmosphere throughout the whole movie. I can't really describe it, but it just makes it more likable. An ambitious story with an indie team working on it, so for that I can't fault the movie. They pulled it off. Just have some patience while watching. Oh, and one last thing, there's no snow in the entire movie, nothing to indicate that it's cold. This could have been titled Screams of a Night and it would have been the same movie. But I digress. If you love anthology and can deal with some slow pacing, check out Screams of a Winter Night. I give it 2 flying witches out of 4.